Waiter had just set down the dessert menus when my son-in-law leaned in close enough that I could smell the rye on his breath, and told me in a voice meant only for me that his mother had decided I shouldn't come to the wedding. I want to be honest about what happened in my body before my mind caught anything. My hands were folded in my lap. The restaurant was one of those places off Bloor with the long windows and the little brass lamps on every table, the kind of place my late husband would have called fussy, and there was a low hum of other people's conversations all around us, and somewhere a fork scraped a plate, and I felt my shoulders drop about an inch, not up, down, like something inside me had given way quietly, the way an old floorboard does when you stepped on it 1,000 times, and one day it just lets go. He said it gently. That's the part I keep coming back to. He didn't sneer. He didn't raise his voice. My son-in-law has never once raised his voice at me, and I used to think that was a kindness, back when I still thought a lot of things. He put his hand on my forearm, light, the way you touch someone you were comforting, and he said, "Mom's worried it'll be a lot of family politics, and she wants the day to be smooth. So we think it's best you sit this one out. We'll send you the video. Honestly, the photographer's doing a live stream too, so you won't miss a thing." "You won't miss a thing." I looked across the table at my daughter. She was reaching for her water glass, and she stopped with her fingers around it, not lifting it, just holding it, and I watched her face go very still. The candle between us was one of those squat ones in a frosted holder, and its little flame didn't so much as wobble, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that even the flame was waiting to see what I'd do. I smiled. I want you to understand that I smiled because I've been a woman in rooms for 63 years, and I learned a long time ago that the first thing a certain kind of man checks after he said something to put you in your place is whether your face will fall. He wants to see it fall. It's the whole point. So I smiled the way you smile at a stranger who stepped on your foot on the streetcar, and I said, "That's thoughtful of you to think of the logistics, dear." And I picked the dessert menu back up. He sat back satisfied, and that was his mistake, because he thought it was over. Let me tell you how he got to that table. My daughter is the only child I have left. Her brother passed when he was 19, a long time ago now, and I won't go into it because that's a different grief, and it doesn't belong in this story, but I tell you so you understand what she is to me. After my husband died, she and I got close in a way we hadn't been when she was younger. Bill ran a small chain of hardware stores, 3 of them, then 5, then 7 by the end, spread out across the southwestern part of the province, the kind of stores where the same man has been cutting keys for 40 years and knows your father's name. Bill built that from one rented unit in a strip mall in 1981. I did the books for the first 15 years at our kitchen table after the kids were in bed. People hear chain of stores and they picture something grand. It wasn't grand. It was a lot of early mornings and a lot of worry and a lot of standing in the cold counting inventory in an unheated stockroom. But it was ours, and when Bill's heart gave out 4 years ago, it went to our daughter because she'd been working in it since she was 16 and she understood it better than anyone alive, me included. She runs all 7 stores now. She's good at it. Better than Bill, if I'm being truthful, though I'd never have said that to his face. She has a head for the numbers and a way with the staff, and she kept every single one of them on through the rough patch after he died when half the family was sure she'd sell. She didn't sell. She dug in. And then, 2 springs ago, he came back. They dated in their last year of high school, she and this man, the one who just told me I could watch the wedding on a screen. It moved out west after graduation, Calgary, I think, then somewhere else, and there'd been a marriage that didn't take and no children from it. And then one day he turned up at her office in Kitchener with a coffee in each hand, and that easy way some men have of acting like no time has passed at all. He told her he'd always wondered. He told her he'd grown up. He told her he was looking for a fresh start, and wasn't it something, the way life circles back? She lit up. I hadn't seen her light up in a long time. Grief had made her practical and a little hard around the edges, and here was this person from before all the loss, before her father got sick, before she became the woman who has to make payroll, and I understood why she reached for him. I want that on the record. I understood it completely. When you've spent 4 years being the strong one, somebody who knew you when you were soft is a powerful thing. So she gave him a job, not a grand one at first. He had a background in something to do with logistics, supply management, and the stores genuinely needed help on that side. So it wasn't charity, or it didn't look like charity. He started coordinating between the locations, the deliveries, the vendor accounts, and in the beginning he was lovely. I'll give him that, because if I paint him as a villain from the first day you won't believe me, and you shouldn't, because that's not how it goes. It never goes like that. He called me Mrs. Hawthorne for the first month, then asked if he could call me by my first name, then started calling me Mom around the time the engagement happened. He'd carry my groceries up the walk. He'd fix the squeak in my screen door without being asked. When the three of us went out, he'd pull my chair. The first winter, he came over with a bag of road salt and did my front steps before I'd even thought about it. And I stood at the window with my tea and thought, well, maybe this is a good one. The changes were so small I couldn't have pointed to a first one. He stopped asking before he used my daughter's car. Then he stopped using the spare and started using the main set of keys. At the stores, when a vendor called and she wasn't in the room, he started saying we've decided instead of I'll ask her. I caught that one on a Sunday at her kitchen table. She was on the phone with the supplier and stepped out to take it, and he was sitting across from me with his coffee, and her phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it and said, half to himself, I'll handle it, and reached for it. And I saw my daughter come back into the doorway and see him reach for her phone and not say anything. Just watch, the way I was watching. That's the thing about her that he underestimated. She watches. His parents started coming around more once the engagement was set. They live up near Bury, retired, and they drive down for these long Sunday lunches that I was sometimes invited to, and sometimes increasingly not. His mother is a woman who compliments your home in a way that's actually an appraisal. She'd walk through my daughter's house, a nice house, a house my girl bought with her own money, and she'd touch the countertops and ask what they'd paid and say, and this is all hers, is it? With a little tilt of the head, and hers would hang in the air like she was already mentally drawing up a different deed. The father was worse because he was quieter. He'd corner my son-in-law and talk about the business in this low, confidential way, man to man, about the operation and scaling, and once you two are settled, and he'd say it all loud enough for me to hear and pretend he didn't know I was in the next room. He had opinions about how the stores should be run. He'd never sold a screw in his life, and through all of it, my daughter's man was changing his posture. I don't know how else to say it. He started to walk through her house like the floors had been poured for his feet. He'd stretch out on her couch and put his heels on her coffee table. One evening I heard him say to her in the hall, not knowing I was in the den, "You don't need to run everything past your mother, you know. You're not a kid." And I waited for her to answer, and she didn't, and I told myself she was just tired. I should have said something then. I've thought about that a great deal. But here's the truth a lot of mothers know and won't admit. When your daughter has decided a man is her future, your warnings don't sound like love. They sound like jealousy. They sound like an old woman who can't bear to be replaced. So I held my tongue and I watched, and I prayed about it the way my own mother taught me, which is to say without expecting an answer, just to have somewhere to put the worry. Then came the dinner. The one-off blow, the you can stream it online dinner. We finished dessert. I had the lemon tart and I ate every bite of it because I'll be damned if a man like that was going to take my appetite along with everything else. We made small talk. His parents weren't there that night. It was just the three of us, which I think now was deliberate. That he chose a night without witnesses he'd have to perform for. He paid the bill with a flourish, with her card, I noticed, and we put on our coats and went out into a cold April drizzle, and he hugged me goodbye on the sidewalk and said, "No hard feelings, Mom. It's just the way these things go." And I said, "Of course, dear." And I got in my daughter's car and she drove me home and neither of us said one word the whole way. She walked me to my door, the same steps he'd salted that first winter. And under the porch light, she turned to me and her face wasn't still anymore. It had come undone, and she said, "Mom, I'm going to fix this." And I touched her cheek and said, "Don't do anything tonight that you'll have to undo tomorrow." Because I thought she meant she was going to call him and shout, and I didn't want her doing it in a temper. But she didn't mean that. I understood later she didn't mean that at all. She didn't call him that night. She didn't call him the next day. What she did was go very, very quiet, and if you knew my daughter, you'd know that's the sound a door makes when it's closing on a hinge that doesn't squeak. She came by my place that Sunday alone, sat at my kitchen table where I'd done Bill's books for 15 years, and she had a folder with her, a plain manila folder, and she set it down and didn't open it right away. "I want to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to tell me the truth even if it makes me feel stupid." "Always," I said. "When Dad brought Uncle Ray into the business, the year before everything went sideways, did you know what was happening?" I hadn't expected that. Bill's younger brother. There'd been a bad stretch, 15 years back, where Bill had trusted his brother with too much, signing authority on 2 of the accounts, and Ray had started moving money in ways that weren't quite stealing but weren't quite right, setting things up so he'd have come out owning a piece of something he hadn't built. Bill caught it because Bill, God love him, was paranoid in the way men who built things from nothing are paranoid, and he'd never put all the keys in one pocket. There were 2 signatures required on anything that mattered. Always had been. It saved us. We never spoke of it again, and Ray didn't come to Bill's funeral, and that told you everything. I knew enough, I told her. Why? Because I keep thinking about how Dad set it up. 2 signatures. Always 2. She finally opened the folder. I never took that out of the bylaws. People thought it was old-fashioned. The accountant wanted me to streamline it. I never did. She slid a page across to me. "He's been a signatory on one account since last fall. The vendor account. I added him because it made the deliveries easier, and I trusted him." A small breath. "He cannot sign a loan on anything. He's never been able to. He just doesn't know that yet." I looked at the page. I didn't understand all of it. I understood the shape of it. "Mom," she said, "he's been emailing the suppliers. I pulled the records. He's been telling them that, after the wedding, billing and approvals are going to route through him. He's set up meetings. There's a calendar." She turned her laptop toward me and I saw a column of little blocks, all of them in May, after the date that was supposed to be their wedding. "Strategic alignment," she read off one. "Reporting structure." She closed the laptop. "He's not marrying me. He's acquiring me. And his parents are the board." I want to tell you I was shocked. I wasn't, not underneath. Underneath, I felt something settle, the way you feel when a fever finally breaks and you realize how sick you'd actually been. "What are you going to do?" I asked. And here is where I'll be honest about my own part. Because the comments, well, there are no comments, this is just me and you. But if I were watching some other woman tell this story, I'd be shouting at the screen. Why didn't the mother do anything? Why did she just smile and eat her tart? So I'll tell you what I did. I reached across that table, the same table, and I took my daughter's hands and I said, "No, before you tell me what you're going to do, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. because I've been quiet for 2 years to keep the peace, and quiet is what let it get this far. So I'm done being quiet. I'm coming with you to the lawyer. I'm coming with you to the bank. I'm not watching this on a screen." She looked at me and something cracked in her face, and then she laughed, a wet little laugh, and she said, "There she is. We didn't move in temper. That's what I'm proudest of. We moved like Bill would have moved, slow and exact." She removed him as a signatory on a Tuesday morning, quietly, through the bank. No announcement. She had her lawyer, a sharp young woman in Waterloo who'd done the estate work, draft the paperwork to formalize that all 7 stores, the holding company, the building leases, every last bolt of it, sat with my daughter alone, as it always legally had. Just now, in language no one could pretend to misread, she archived 2 years of his emails to the suppliers, the whole correspondence, every "we've decided," and every meeting he'd booked behind her back, and she had the lawyer keep a copy, not to use it, just to have it. "You don't lock a door and walk away," she told me. "You check what they took on their way in." Then, that Friday, she sat him down in the living room of her own house. I was there. She asked me to be there, and I said, "Try and stop me." He came in from the back, easy, a beer in his hand, and he saw the 2 of us sitting on the couch, and his face did a thing, a flicker, before he smoothed it. "What's this?" he said, half a laugh. "An intervention? Your employment with the company ends today," my daughter said. My daughter said. She didn't stand up. She didn't raise her voice. She used the exact tone he'd used on me in the restaurant, gentle, final, and I understood she'd chosen it on purpose. "Your access to the accounts was closed Tuesday. Your things from the office are in 2 boxes by the front door. The wedding is off. I'll have someone get the rest of your things from upstairs by the weekend." He stood there, the beer in his hand, and the gentleness went out of him all at once, and there he was, the real one, the one I'd seen reaching for her phone. "You can't do this," he said. "You can't just—" "Over what? Over a seat at a wedding, your mother's pride?" He looked at me with such contempt I almost admired the honesty of it. "She put you up to this." "No," my daughter said. "You did. The day you decided she could watch my life on a screen, you told me exactly what you thought my family was worth. I just listened. After everything I've done for those stores, you coordinated deliveries," she said. "You did not build a thing. My father built it. My mother kept the books at this kind of table for 15 years. I have run it for 4. You have been here for 2. And in 2 you've already told a dozen suppliers you'd be running it by June." She let that sit. "I have the emails. I'm not going to use them. I don't need to. I just want you to know that I know, so you don't get to leave here telling yourself I was hysterical." His parents called within the hour. Her phone lit up over and over on the kitchen counter. The mother first, then the father, and my daughter didn't answer, and I watched her not answer. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. She didn't make a spectacle of any of it. That's what I want you to understand, because I think the dignity of it is the whole point. There was no scene, no screaming on a lawn for the neighbors. She didn't post a word about it anywhere. When people from the extended family started calling, fishing, wanting the gory version, she gave them nothing at all. It didn't work out, she'd say, pleasant as anything, and change the subject. He didn't get a single drop of drama to spin into a story where he was the wronged one. He just had to pack 2 boxes and go. He went back out west, I heard, Calgary again, or near it. The marriage that was supposed to happen would have been the day after the long weekend in May. And on that day, my daughter and I drove out to the original store, the first one, the one in the strip mall that's still standing, and we walked through it in the morning before it opened. The same man who's been cutting keys there since 1985 was at the counter, and he tipped his head to us. My daughter had brought a framed photo. It was Bill, young, lean, standing under the first sign he ever hung, his arm around her when she was small enough to tuck under it. She'd had it cleaned up and framed, and she set it on the wall by the register where everyone coming in would see it. "Not for him," she said, and I knew she meant the man who was gone. "For Dad. For us." I didn't say anything because my throat had closed. We've talked since more honestly than we have in years. She apologized to me one Sunday at my table, not for him, but for the months before him. The way she'd started to let his voice tell her that my voice was an inconvenience. She said she caught herself a few times almost making me smaller to keep the peace in her own house, and that it shamed her. I told her what my own mother told me, which is that we learn, and that a daughter who can see the thing she almost did is worth 10 who can't. I'm 63. I've buried a son and a husband, and I have been underestimated by men in restaurants my whole life. But I want to tell you the lesson I keep, the one I'd hand to any woman watching her own version of this from her own kitchen with her own tea going cold. A family that needs you to disappear to stay smooth was never a family. It was a waiting room. And you are allowed, at any age, to stand up and walk out of the waiting room and go home. I keep coming back to the gentleness of it. He never once raised his voice at me, and for a long time I mistook that for kindness. It wasn't. It was confidence. A man only tells you, calm as anything, that you can watch your own family on a screen when he's already decided you don't count. That calm was the whole tell, and the reason none of it surprised me underneath is that I'd seen the shape of it before. Years ago, when Bill caught his brother Ray moving money in the soft, patient way that looks like nothing, until it's everything. Bill didn't trust easily, and he never put all the keys in one pocket, and that one habit, 2 signatures, always 2, is the reason my daughter still owns what her father built. Cause and effect. He set a guard in place 15 years ago, and it caught a thief he never met. What saved us this time wasn't luck either. My daughter is sharp, and she watched. She watched him reach for her phone and say, "We've decided," before she'd decided anything, and instead of arguing, she went quiet and pulled the records and read every email he'd send the suppliers. That's a kind of cleverness I want every young woman to learn. Not the quick comeback, but the long look, the patience to gather the facts before you ever raise your voice. He expected hysteria. He got a paper trail. But being right wasn't enough, and this is the part I had to learn for myself, sitting at that table eating my lemon tart while something in me caved. Knowing a thing and saying it are 2 different acts of courage. I'd stayed quiet for 2 years to keep the peace, and quiet is exactly what let it crawl as far as it did. The hardest thing I did wasn't watching her close his accounts. It was reaching across the table and telling her at 63 that I was done being managed, that I would not be watching my own life on a live stream. Standing up after years of sitting down takes more out of you than people think, and underneath all of it sat the simplest thing, the thing his mother and father never had: decency, how a person treats the ones they think are beneath them. The old woman, the staff, nobody thanks. The man who's cut keys at the same counter since 1985 tells you everything about what they'd do with power once they had it. He showed me exactly who he was at that dinner, and I believed him. If I could hand one thing to anyone watching their own version of this from their own kitchen, it would be this: guard what matters before you're tested. Look hard before you speak, but when the moment comes, speak. And measure people, not by how they charm the powerful, but by how they treat the ones who can't do anything for them. A family that needs you to disappear to stay smooth was never a family. It was a waiting room, and you're allowed, at any age, to stand up and walk home.